Jasmine, thank you for joining me. You're looking as glamorous and gorgeous as ever.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
And it's always great to say that when people listen to podcasts, because they have absolutely no idea. You could be looking terrible. And I'm just saying wonderful things. Fortunately, it's not the case. So Jasmine, tell me, before we go into getting some advice from you on our finances, what are the main subjects you're asked to talk about at conferences and events?
Well, primarily, I would say it's a mixture of managing your money. I do masterclasses in that, but I also talk about investing and business generally.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to pick your brain, but what got you interested in that? What's your background?
Well, my background is pretty mixed. I've never had an actual job, nasty things jobs. No, don't like them. I've always worked for myself and I've done lots of different things. So I've been a mixture of being a comedian, actress, writer. I mean, I've always written, performer in various ways, but also TV presenter, radio presenter, journalist and entrepreneur. And the whole money thing came up. As I say, I've always been a journalist, always been a performer, but right at the end of the 90s, I got called by the BBC business unit who said, would you like to come and do some work in the radio unit? And I said, yeah, great, because I needed the work. And they said, you got any business background, you know? And I went, no. And they said, that's fine, that's all right. So I always thought that was funny. And so I went there and I loved it. The first day I was in the business unit, I thought, oh, this is for me, because I've always been interested in consumer issues. I've done stuff for you and yours and all that kind of thing. And I love business as well. And so I just was particularly drawn to the personal finance side. So from the first day, I thought, this is where it's at. And particularly when I was working there for a few weeks and I was doing some reading and research on something, and I had a light bulb moment, because right at that moment, I was actually in debt. And I thought, hey, this money thing, it's not hard. How come I'm in debt? Because I'd had a decent education. I'm not stupid. And I thought, well, nobody taught me. Nobody ever taught me how to run my money. And I thought, well, if I've had a decent education, what hope has anybody else got, really? Because nobody gets taught how to manage their money. And I thought, right, this is going to be my thing. I know I'm going to be the person who puts the funny into money. I'm going to explain money in a way that somebody like me, who's got, I'm a lovey, I did English, no clever stuff, no maths or anything. Somebody like me could understand. So that's what I've tried to do ever since.
I love that. I love the fact that if you look at the job history, they're all jobs really where there's no real security. It's not like you're going to be there for 30 years. You're literally looking for the next job all the time, aren't you?
Yes.
And so that came along and made you think about money, the funny into money. I like that. But it's so true. We're not taught about how to manage our money, and we learn our bad habits from our parents, maybe, or in fact, we go the opposite. So my parents were amazing, and they still are amazing savers. They never spent beyond their means. They managed to, I mean, my father's been retired for years, and I have no idea how they've managed to cope, because they've been so clever with their money. And I rebelled against that. So I always bought everything first and then thought, right, now I've got to work to pay for it. And I'm still like that. I stretch myself and stretch. So I do think there is a gap. So, okay, let's talk about speakers, because in a way it's a little bit like your jobs, that it's like speakers and creatives. They sort of have the same sort of issues, don't they? What should they put in place, would you say, to maximize their money?
Yes, I think it's absolutely right that all creatives have, on the whole, are more, as you say, like you, and frankly, like me at times, you think, it'll be fine, it'll be great, I'll just buy this, I'll buy that, oh yes, and then I'll get lots of work. That was basically how I got into debt, back in the day. And I tend to say to people, do as I say, don't do as I do, or have done, frankly, because I've learned the hard way. So I think with creatives, and speakers tend to be like that, you have to think like a business, and you have to really protect yourself. So where possible, set money aside, particularly during the good days, because you'll have good times, bad times, good years, bad years. I mean, as you know, there are certain times of the year when you have more work and it all looks fabulous. That's not the time to go out and buy yourself a fabulous holiday. That's the time to put some money aside so that you help you through the lean times. So setting money aside, boringly, doing some sort of a budget is really helpful. And in particular, and this is something I say to anybody who works for themselves, as you've noticed, I've always worked for myself, in particular, to think of yourself, your business, as a business. Think of yourself as a brand. And this is one of the talks that I do, actually, for all sorts of people. I talk about how to be your own brand, because that's what I learned very early on, that if I wanted to be a success, if I wanted to get anywhere, I had to stop thinking of myself as this poor little thing, poor little me trying to get work and nobody's giving me any work and who please can have, all this sort of thing. I had to think like Coca-Cola. I had to think like Amazon, because I'm Jasmine Birtles. Who? Yeah, Jasmine Birtles, the brand. And when you think of yourself as a brand, then it's much easier. It's more separate from yourself. So if you get rejected, well, fine, that's the brand that's got rejected. But it makes you think in a business way. So I was thinking, okay, how does Coca-Cola think about its brand? And what departments do they have? They've got their CEO, they've got their accounts department, they've got the PR department, marketing, sales, all that sort of thing. Well, Jasmine Birtles' brand has to have a sales department and a marketing department and an IT department and an accounts department. And that sales department needs to get on the phone and get selling. And that marketing department needs to get the website a bit better, and that accounts department needs to phone up and go, have you paid the invoice? Could you pay it now? All of that. So it sort of separates you personally from the business, and it gives you a real oomph, because you think, oh golly, it's a business, I better get on with it, really, hadn't I?
I like that, sort of having several personalities in one, that you become
Yes.
a different place, maybe even a different voice, perhaps, or maybe you even set up lots of different email addresses, that so you're somebody else, or you are accounts at Jasmine Birtle, you're HR, etc., etc. But it's always you, right? I like that. I like that, and I like you talking about yourself in the third person. That's really cool. You mentioned budget, so I have a budget for my business.
Good.
I don't have a budget for me personally, so. And I do have a separate business. I have a limited company and I have a team.
Yeah.
So can you give me some tips about creating a budget for myself? Because I'm thinking, we've got a wedding coming up this year that we need to pay for. We've just bought a second home that we need to pay for. So we've spent like crazy folk. I haven't got a budget. That's not clever, right?
Well, it's a good point, because a proper budget, I think everybody has a different view of this, but my idea of a proper budget is a flexible one. But the idea of a budget really is as a foundation to your wealth. It enables you to have control. And this is when I do my money workshops, this is what I talk about right at the start, that it's about taking control of your money rather than it having control over you, because our money should really be where my seat is. It should be supporting you rather than being behind you going, oh heck, what's there, or oh, I need to get more of it. So when you have a budget, it gives you at least a fighting chance of knowing what money's coming in, what has to go out, and therefore what you've got to play with, So I talk about doing, there are loads of online budgets, which are really good, because it reminds you, oh yeah, TV license, and oh yeah, car insurance, and they often sort of put your money into, they divide into a month, if it's an annual payment. But frankly, if you can just get the back of an envelope, put 2 columns and write down, what your monthly income is, and that could be your salary, or what I do with mine is I take my last 2 years, add it all up, divide that by 24, and that's roughly an idea of what I make per month, and then a list of your rent and mortgage, your essentials. And if you add that up, take that away from your income, then you've got a fighting chance of knowing roughly how much you can play with each month, and therefore potentially how much you could do with making extra. It's a help, because when you're freelance, when you're self-employed, it's really good to be given a benchmark of how much you really need to earn each month to keep the wolf away from the door, keep the body and soul together and everything. And that again gives you impetus. You think, oh golly, I've got, if I'm going to keep up with my mortgage, I'm going to have to make £3,000 at least a month just to cope with the bills, that forget living. So that makes you think, okay, so really ideally I could do with making five or six. Oh golly, at the moment I'm only making 2.5. Right, okay, let's go for it. So that's when you're freelance, when you're self-employed, and you're having to think like a business. But for anybody, if you're on a salary, if you're on a pension, whatever, if at least you can have a ballpark idea of how much you have to spend. And by the way, once you've filled in that list, you could maybe look at it and think, can I bring that down a bit? Could I switch my bills and everything and bring that? And do I really need that TV package? So it makes you think about what you're spending. And that's a real help. And then finally, the other great thing about doing a budget, particularly if you do a survival budget, is that also then tells you how much you need to save, how much money you need to put away just to cover to be your self-insurance. So say, for example, it costs you £1,000 a month to keep going each month. Ideally, you should put £3,000, 3 times that amount, away into a savings account that you don't touch unless everything goes pear-shaped. It could be 6,000, to be honest. I mean, that would be even better, but at least 3,000. So that's what doing a budget does. It helps you have control. It helps you save. And for freelancers like us, for self-employed people, it gives you an impetus to earn more, frankly.
Yeah, a bit of a reality check, really. So I was always told, so I've worked for myself for many, many years, mainly because I'm probably unemployable. So I've been my own boss, yeah, I think I would be a nightmare. But anyway, past that now.
Yeah.
I was always told to have 6 months worth of living costs available, put aside. So I've always done that. And actually, another great bit of advice that I had, which that paid off, by the way, that 6 months when we had the pandemic, because I was one of those that slipped through the net and didn't get any support. So that saved me. But the other thing that somebody gave me advice, which I thought was a really good idea, and actually it was the founder of London Speaker Bureau when I started working there, self-employed and on commission only. He said to me, put as much as you can into premium bonds. So when your tax bill comes in, you've got your tax money aside, but you also might win.
Yeah.
And it's tax free. And ever since, and I've never really bothered with premium bonds at that point. Ever since, I've always got the maximum premium bonds I can have. And it's always my fallback when I need it. It's really useful. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, well done. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that, because I never really think about premium bonds myself, but some people are really, really keen on them. And as you say, you certainly need to put your tax money away. Tax-free. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it's safe. You don't lose it. So I don't understand people who spend money on the lottery. They may win, but it's gone. Yeah. Premium bonds, you can get it back. That's what I like about premium bonds.
Yes, I agree. I'm a big believer in keeping that money, and I can't bear the lottery. I can't bear any of those things. The probability is so small that you're going to really win that it's just not worth it.
No, unless it's obviously one that's donating to a good cause, and then you don't mind if you win or not because the money's going to be used, I suppose. I'm going to do a budget. You having said that, and I'm going to keep it as simple as you said. I'm going to do that. And it may happen that we might end up cancelling our wedding reception as a result. We will find out. So what would you say is the biggest mistake that speakers and creatives make, which causes them to lose money, or have you already touched on that?
Well, I've kind of touched on it in a way. I think it is not thinking in terms of business. This is, I think, a seismic shift in one's thinking, particularly when you start to be a speaker. And as you've mentioned, you'll get 5,000 in, and you think, oh, I've got 5,000, not realizing you're going to have to pay tax on that at some point. So yeah, you're going to have to put that aside. And Also, I think, again, it takes some time for people to realize what it's good to spend on, really quite important to spend on, and what it's not. So, for example, it took me a while and some heartache really to realize that actually it was worth my while paying for a bookkeeper, because I just could not be bothered doing all the sort of inputting little bits of spending and incomes and whatever. So when it came to, and this happened particularly when I went VAT registered, because, you know, every quarter you have to put your books in, and actually that's a really good discipline. But I was finding, you know, my accountant was saying, where are the books, where are the books, when I was like, oh, no. And so I thought, right, I will pay for a bookkeeper, and it's a fabulous thing to pay for, because, you know, that money you can set against tax anyway, and it takes that headache off you. It means that somebody is going to do it properly as opposed to me, and that together with an accountant, and you know, one or two other advisors, agents, certainly, you know, good agents. There are people who are really, really worth paying. Some who are not, but, you know, you learn over time which ones are worth it and which ones aren't.
I totally agree with you. We actually had a VAT inspection
Oh,
during the pandemic. And
yeah.
I was so glad that I actually, because I was just trying to keep things afloat during the pandemic. And also then, of course, I started a new business. And the last thing I wanted to be doing is trawling through the VAT, which was for stuff that had been postponed or cancelled. And I didn't want to be in that space. And I was able to say to the lady who handles all of my bookkeeping and to my accountant, you two go sort it out, which they did. And there actually there was we had made a mistake. There was a mistake that had been made, and that was due simply because things had been postponed and changed and rescheduled so many times that there'd been an error entering. But the VAT people were actually very sympathetic because they realised that, you know, it was a genuine mistake. But it's a horrible experience to go through a VAT inspection. It really is. It really is. You mentioned accountants. You mentioned bookkeepers. How early should you bring these experts in?
Well, honestly, I think with an accountant, certainly in the first year, you know, I would say, you know, as pretty within the first 3 to 6 months that you're starting, a good accountant will be able to go through your expenses for the last few years, you know, because there are some expenses that you've incurred before you even started your business that you can then put against tax. And a good accountant will be able to tell you that. Of course, there's a lot of information online, but it's all very conservative, you know, gov.uk, marvelous website, and it's got a whole big section for self-employed, and it goes through this quite conservative list of things that you can put against tax. But then you speak to an accountant, they're like, oh, you can add in this, you can add in that, and you go, oh, right, oh, all right, then I'll keep all my receipts, and, you know. So
Ooh.
yes, pretty early on would be a good thing, certainly in the first year.
Fantastic. And I think actually the great benefit of an accountant as well is my accountant certainly helped me structure my business, gave me a lot of advice on
Yes,
that.
yes.
And that was really helpful indeed. Um, so actually, here's a question for you. I don't know if are you familiar with the concept of profit first? Mike Mikhalo, well, I can't say his surname, Mikhailovich. I can't say it.
Oh,
He's
no,
written a profit.
yeah.
He says to take out your profit
Mhm.
first, put it into an account that you're not going to touch.
Yes.
And then what you have left, then you've got your operating costs, you've got your tax. So he suggests you have lots of different accounts to
Mhm.
put your money in, and then you really know what you've got left. So in a way, it's probably like budgeting, but you're actually budgeting for your profit first. You decide what the percentage is going to
Yes.
be, and you're also then got little accounts for all of, you know, how much you can spend.
That's a good idea. Well, and you know, for people, for, you know, individuals, one thing that I'm always going on about is to pay yourself first, because, you know, as I say, this is for individuals, but it works for businesses as well. You know, when I've been interviewed on telly or radio, whatever, and about saving and the fact that we're not saving, etc. Whoever is interviewing me usually says, "But I don't have any money left at the end of the month," and I go, "No, nobody has any money left at the end of the month. That's why you have to set it aside at the beginning of the month." So, you know, if you're on a salary, probably a lot of your direct debits and whatever go out at the beginning of the month, just after you get your pay. But, you know, as I say, I'm freelance, so it comes in all over the place. But I set up some standing orders at the beginning of the month, which go into savings, investments, pension, etc. And that's me, paying my future self. And after that, then I can think about paying the supermarkets, paying the travel agents, paying the restaurants, that sort of thing. But if you pay yourself first, if you set money aside and do it automated, it's hopeless if you have to leave it to yourself. You have to automate it as a standing order, pay into investments for yourself. Then that's done. It's out of the way, and that means that you're looking after your future self before you fritter your money on, food and things.
Fantastic. What sort of percentage do you think you should be putting into a pension, or is that very individual?
Well, it kind of is individual. There are a few rules. For example, one useful one to use is to take your age, halve it, and use that as a percentage of your gross income that you put into your retirement fund. So when I say retirement fund, that can be pension, ISAs, gold, property, all sorts of things, frankly. So that's one good rule, because as you know, the younger you are, the less you need to put in, because you've got years and decades for the money to grow, thanks to the joy and wonder of compound interest. But when you get older, you have less time, so you have to put more cash in, usually. But another thing to do is now there's an organization, a sort of an association type thing called the FIRE movement. I don't know if you've heard that. Financial Independence, Retire Early. So these people are aiming to retire at 40 or 35 or 30, and so the way they're working at it is they're thinking, okay, I want to retire at X time. I will need X amount of money to do it. How do I get there? And this is extreme saving, extreme investing. They're living on a basic amount, and they're putting, the vast amount of money that they're making into investments, so that they can get a certain amount of money by a certain time. And a lot of them manage it. You can do it if you want to. It's not my way of living. I'm for a start, I don't see myself retiring. I tell everybody else about retiring. I have no intention of doing so much.
No, me neither. I mean, work, especially now, is just so much fun. So
Yeah.
no, absolutely, I don't see myself retiring. And yeah, it seems, I'm glad you said it doesn't have to be pension, and it can be property, because I've always sort of stretched myself with property rather than, and I'm not talking about rental property. I'm talking about, I want to live in the nicest house I possibly can. So yeah, because I'm like you, I like to have a good lifestyle. Yeah. Okay, here's the thing, right? Inflation, cost of living. I mean, we fell over when we ordered our oil recently. It's gone up probably 33%, nearly 40%. And inflation, of course, everything, petrol. I mean, it's just crazy. How do we cope when probably our income has stayed the same, but our costs have now gone crazy?
Well, I think that, obviously there are two things. On the one hand, we need to cut down our costs as much as we can. And again, when I do interviews, which I keep doing at the moment, about how to cope with energy bills, what I'm saying is it's lots of little hacks that you do around the house to reduce your energy use, because there's nothing we can do about the price. We can't really switch at the moment. So certainly it's about having a look at all your expenses. And again, when you do your budget, that's a good time. You might look at what you've been spending on food and think, good grief, how on earth do I do that? When you might find you having takeaways all the time. Well, just reduce the number of those. Just have a look. Everybody's different. So just have a look at where you think, honestly, you could make some cuts. But then on the other side, it's about increasing your income, frankly. And, like you, I've been, as you know, I've been self-employed for years and years. And all that time, I'm thinking, okay, there's one way of making money. Oh, and I need to do that at the same time. I've always had multiple income streams. And over time, other people have joined me. I mean, I remember my dad saying, when are you going to get a proper job? And I kept saying, I can't think of a proper job. And so having a portfolio career is becoming the norm. And I'm saying to people, don't just have one side hustle, have two if you can, you know, because there are lots of really quite interesting ways, I think, of making money on the side. And my website, moneymagpie.com, specializes in that. We've got literally hundreds of ways that you can make some money. So I think going forward, and when I say going forward, I'm thinking the next 3 to 5 years, honestly, it's not going to be that easy. And we are all going to need to find other ways of making money to manage with the, I think prices are going to continue to rise. They might go down again, they'll go up, they'll go down again. We're in a time of volatility, and I don't want to depress anybody, but you know, we need to be aware that it's not going to be that easy for a little while. We need to be prepared for it.
I am going to head straight to moneymagpie.com and look at the hundreds of ways. I always like to, like you, portfolio. And I'm glad you said that, because I think many speakers who just had the keynote speech as their income stream during COVID, you know, had to rethink. And so I do love this portfolio opportunity. It's great, really good idea. So when you're running workshops for employees and for other groups, is this the kind of stuff you're also talking about, or is it different because they are on PAYE and they're not self-employed?
Well, it's a good point. Yes, I am more, if you like, talking about the basics. So we talk about the importance of getting out of debt, how to get out of debt, where to go to get help, why it's important to get out of debt. And we talk a bit about compound interest, because as you know, when you're in debt, compound interest is your worst enemy. When you're investing, it's your best friend. And it's important to understand the power of it. And then I go through quite a lot of ways to spend smart. You know, we talk about going through your bills, doing a budget, doing a spending diary as well. That's a fun thing to do every now and then. You know, why I say fun, you know, write down what you're spending and think, oh, really? In my case, it's like, what, another tea and cake? Oh, for goodness sake, Jasmine. And how to be clever with your money day to day, all of that. And then how to save, and also the difference between saving and investing. And then I tend to have different workshops, but quite often I'll start people off on the idea of investing, get them used to the concept, because in this country we're not great at even thinking about investing. In America, everyone's got their 401k and they understand it. Here we're a bit scared of the stock market, so I sort of debunk some of that. But I also do whole workshops on a bit more of a granular introduction to investing, because I really do want everyone to get investing in some form, and particularly women, because women are getting more confidence, but they're still lagging behind men quite a way when it comes to investing. I mean, they say women save, men invest, and that needs to change.
Well, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So mine isn't tea and cakes. Mine's books on Amazon. I have so many books, and I'm going to go away shortly, and I'm working out which books can I take. And I'm thinking, well, if I put the books in there that I want to read, there's no space for clothes. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. Okay, so we're coming up to year end at the time of this going out. Can you give me some tips and give us all some tips on how to reduce tax? I've got my pen and paper ready.
Oh gosh, yes, because the government doesn't give much away, and it's not easy. One thing that's not often thought about actually is checking your tax code, because quite a lot of people are on the wrong tax code. So it's worth just getting in touch with HMRC and just checking that you are on the right tax code, because particularly if you're freelance, I think that's it's important to know that you are, because you could actually be being charged too much tax. If so, you can see if they can, backdate some of the repayments. So that's a possibility. But traditionally, this is a time when people are thinking, oh, gosh, I must put more in my pension. I must put more in my ISA, because from April the 6th to April the 5th, the tax year, you're allowed to put up to £40,000 into your pension and up to £20,000 into your ISA. And also with pensions, the useful thing is that you can actually add in any extra pension that you didn't use last year before, the last 3 years. So if you've had a really good year this year and you're wondering what to do with your surplus, nice one, well done, you can actually bring in, say, maybe an extra 40k. You could possibly put in 80k this year, because you didn't use up, over the last few years. So I would put in extra into your pension if you can, because I mean, admittedly, for us freelance, we don't get the great idea of the great thing of extra money put in by our employers, but still you do get the money added in by the government, and hey, that's pretty much the only free money we get from the government, one of the few elements. So it's worth putting more money into your pension. And then I would definitely say put as much as you can. If you can put 20k, brilliant, into an ISA. I personally have never opened a cash ISA. I've always put money into stocks and shares ISA, or what they call an IF ISA, an innovative finance ISA, because long term cash savings accounts are useless. They don't keep up with inflation. I mean, they really don't at the moment. They're pathetic at the moment. But over time, if you look at cash accounts, savings accounts, they've never properly kept up with inflation. It's only stocks and shares, used to be bonds, not anymore really, and property. Those are the things that really keep up with inflation. Gold as well. So I've always put my ISA money into stocks and shares ISAs, or innovative finance ISAs if I happen to like a particular platform. So that's something that I strongly recommend.
That's really good advice. Thank you. In fact, I've just written down gold as well because I quite like gold. So it's golden advice. So,
Yeah.
Jasmine, what are your plans going forward financially and speaking wise?
Well, yes, I've recently taken on a business advisor, a business consultant for moneymagpie.com, and she's been enormously helpful, and particularly helpful at focusing my thought on profit and income, and growing the business. So this year we're planning on doubling the traffic and the profit, the income for moneymagpie.com, for Money Magpie Limited. And then for me, I'm doing more TV and radio, and I actually have, I'm just putting plans in place now for the autumn. I'm going to do a road show in various theatres in Britain with my new show, which is called How to Be Rich Without Really Trying. It's going to totally put the funny into money. I'm going to do a book for with it as well. And it's going to be a genuine, if you like, not workshop, but it's going to be a show that genuinely gives people proper financial information, but makes them laugh, and we'll have a sing-song and all sorts. It's going to be a show with extras.
Oh, I'm coming. Sign me up. That sounds fantastic. Yeah, and when you've got dates, let us know. We'll share it. That sounds brilliant. Jasmine, thank you. It's been lovely to talk to you. I have 2 pages of notes, so I shall be getting on with stuff. I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
I really have. Thank you so much, Maria. It's been wonderful to be on. Nice to be able to talk about interesting things, frankly.
Absolutely. And if you have enjoyed listening to the Speaking Business podcast, please do give us a nice rating on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends, share it with them. And until next time, I have been Maria Franzoni. Bye-bye for now.